a single slash said to cut through space itself, a devil sword feared by an entire cultivation world, and one man who stood calmly and chose to face it head-on. When the Blood Devil Sword awakens, will it be a massacre or its first true defeat? If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. Han Lai replied to Nangong Wan's senior martial sister in an unhurried tone, his voice calm and indifferent. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is why you insist on being so stubborn. Hand over the constraining heart restriction medallion, and we will release you immediately. As for the Blood Devil Sword, although I know nothing about it, I have no fear of it. You would be wise not to place too much reliance on that weapon. The icy woman fixed Han Li with a sinister stare and curled her lips into a cold sneer. You're overestimating yourself. If you truly understood what the Blood Devil Sword is, you wouldn't dare speak so boldly. I'll kill you first and see whether junior martial sister Nangong still dares to resist. The moment her words fell, she bit the tip of her tongue and spat out a dense mist of blood essence onto the small crimson sword. At the same time, her hands rapidly formed an incantation seal. In a brilliant flash of scarlet light, the tiny sword expanded to over 1 meter in length, its blade radiating a vicious blood-soaked aura. The stench of blood instantly thickened, spreading through the hall in an oppressive wave. The icy woman gripped the sword's hilt without hesitation. Her eyes flared with a dazzling light as she poured the entirety of her spiritual power into the crimson blade. Act now, we can't let her strike first. Nangong Wan cried out anxiously, no longer able to maintain her composure. She was well aware of the Blood Devil Sword's terrifying reputation, and held little confidence in Han Li's earlier words. Before she had even finished condensing her divine incarnation light, she pointed toward the massive barrier of light above her head. The luminous dome trembled violently, then began spinning at high speed. Moments later, a brilliant emerald ray shot out like lightning, streaking straight toward the icy woman. Seeing this, the icy woman casually flicked her wrist and tossed out a triangular flag. The instant it left her hand, it transformed into a vast cloud of eerie green mist, intercepting the attack. As soon as the emerald ray struck the fog, a flood dragon burst forth from within the light. Roaring furiously, it surged forward and quickly gained the upper hand, tearing through the mist in an attempt to scatter it. However, like a stubborn disease, layers of green fog clung tightly to the dragon's body, restraining it and preventing it from breaking free. Nangong Wan's expression darkened at the sight, while a trace of delight flashed across the icy woman's face. In the next instant, the icy woman swept the crimson sword through the air and slashed downward toward Han Li. A violent spatial fluctuation rippled outward as a 3-meter-wide wave of sword chi tore through space and rushed straight at him. The sword chi was blood red, radiating a baleful and ominous aura as it surged forward without restraint. After unleashing this attack, the icy woman's complexion flushed deeply, growing redder by the second. With a flash of light, the crimson sword shrank back to its original small size. As the sword ki advanced, the surrounding spiritual ki was dragged along like countless converging streams, concealing the bloody blade within a raging current. Han Li felt his body tense as an invisible force bound him in place. He couldn't circulate his techniques, nor could he move even a single finger. All he could do was watch as the sword ki slowly closed in. Nangong Wan's face turned deathly pale. Her senior martial sister, on the other hand, wore a smug smile. Both women believed Han Li was on the brink of catastrophe. Yet Han Li merely drew a deep breath, his gaze fixed steadily on the incoming sword ki. Suddenly, thunder rang out as wild golden light flickered. A web of faint golden lightning materialized around Han Li's body. The icy woman froze in shock. Before she could react, the blood-red sword ki slammed directly into the lightning net. A deafening explosion echoed through the hall as divine lightning collided with blood-soaked ki. Though the sword ki struggled savagely, attempting to break free, it was unable to sever the thin strands of lightning. Instead, the golden net gradually tightened around it, wrapping it up like a trapped fish. Moments later, the net of divine devilbane lightning vanished from around Han Li and reappeared in mid-air, fully enveloping the restrained sword ki. Han Li glanced at the lightning-bound sword ki with a trace of astonishment. Even with its power to ward off evil, the divine devilbane lightning was being rapidly consumed in the struggle. Had he not released nearly a third of his lightning reserves, he might not have been able to restrain this wicked sword key at all. In truth, this was the first time Han Li had encountered a Devil Dao treasure so resistant to the Devilbane lightning. If this continued, both the lightning and the sword key would dissipate together, something he would not allow. His expression darkened. Raising both hands, Han Li violently released two immensely dense bolts of lightning, striking the net that already bound the crimson sword key. Reinforced by the additional power, the golden lightning finally overwhelmed the sword key, crushing it until only a small cloud of crimson mist remained. Without hesitation, Han Li pointed at the lightning and had it compress the mist into a fist-sized golden sphere. Catching it in his hand, he calmly lifted his gaze toward the woman opposite him. The icy woman stood completely dumbfounded, disbelief written plainly across her face. Nanggong Wan was equally stunned, her lips slightly parted. The complete suppression of the Blood Devil Sword's full-powered attack was utterly beyond their expectations. Ever since the sword had appeared in Heavenly South, no one knew whether it was an ancient treasure or a demonic artifact. Though it resembled an ordinary magic treasure and could be stored within the body, it couldn't be refined like an ancient treasure. Even so, it possessed astonishing power. Unless one avoided its spatial slash in advance, there was virtually no way to block it. Any technique or magic treasure used in defense would likely be cleaved in two. Moreover, the wielder had to consume vast amounts of blood essence and vitality to activate it, while constantly risking backlash from its devilish key. The longer the sword was used, the more devilish essence would contaminate the cultivator's true essence. Once too much accumulated, the cultivator would lose all rationality, transforming into a raging devil until death. There were only a handful of such devilish artifacts throughout Heavenly South, objects both feared and revered. The moment Han Li dispersed the blood sword key, he acted without waiting for the two women to recover. Letting out a sharp whistle, he commanded the gold-devouring beetles above him to surge forward. With a deafening roar, the golden swarm flooded the hall, charging straight at the icy woman. The attack snapped her out of her stupor. Alarmed, she opened her mouth and spat out a small silver sword. Her hands rapidly formed an incantation seal as the sword burst into dazzling brilliance, erecting a barrier of blinding silver light around her. With a sharp pop, the silver sword trembled and unleashed over 1,000 strands of silver light, shooting toward the oncoming swarm. Sword condensed threads, Han Li muttered with a frown. So Nanggong Wan's senior martial sister was a sword cultivator after all. No wonder she possessed so many sword-type treasures. The silver thread struck the golden insect cloud in the next instant. Crackling explosions rang out as countless golden shells rained down, drastically thinning the swarm. Gaping holes appeared wherever the silver threads passed. Han Li's heart sank. Could his current gold-devouring beetles still be unable to contend with nascent soul cultivators? Despite all the effort he had invested in raising them, the icy woman felt a wave of relief. With a few more such attacks, the strange insects would surely be wiped out completely. There seemed to be nothing to fear from them. Yet Han Li's disappointment quickly turned to delight. The beetles that had fallen began to stir. With shrill cries, they took to the air once more, rejoining the swarm as it continued charging toward the icy woman. At that moment, a piercing phoenix cry rang out from within the green fog. A radiance like 1,000 blazing suns erupted cleanly, dispersing the mist and revealing a vermilion moon within. Shimmering brilliantly, the moon shot straight toward the icy woman's barrier. Her expression changed drastically. The light barrier began to spin wildly as her body transformed into a streak of black and white light, fleeing toward the exit of the hall. After this exchange, she had finally realized that facing Han Li and Nanggong Wan together was far too dangerous. She chose to retreat, intending to leave the cave residence and restrain them once she gathered reinforcements. While the two were formidable, they could not withstand the countless disciples of the Masked Moon sect. Once outside, she would activate the sect's grand protective formations and trap them both within. Nanggong Wan's vermilion moon lagged slightly behind as it pursued her senior martial sister, granting the icy woman just enough time to dart upward and strike the ceiling. A dull thud echoed through the hall. Crimson light pulsed across the ceiling, yet it remained intact. Only a few loosened fragments of stone fell crashing down. The icy woman froze in shock. Before she could even process what had happened, the ceiling suddenly flashed with light and swarms of black gold and silver beetles burst forth. Buzzing sharply, they converged at the center of the hall and swiftly formed a tri-colored shield. Startled, the icy woman waved her hand without hesitation, summoning a silver talisman between her fingers. The moment Nangong Wan saw this, she immediately understood her senior martial sister's intent. Her expression sank. Instead of using her divine incarnation light, she slapped her storage pouch. A small red flag appeared in her hand, which she promptly flung into the ground. The icy woman activated the talisman at once. Wrapped in a sphere of yellow light, it shot forth like a blazing meteor streaking toward the ceiling. The yellow radiance pierced straight through the tri-colored shield as if it weren't there, racing unimpeded toward the roof of the hall. At that very moment, Nangong Wan finished chanting her incantation, activating the hidden restrictions of her cave residence. The entire hall lit up in a blazing red glow, every surface ceiling included becoming encased in a dazzling barrier of light. Like a nemesis encountering its bane, the yellow meteor came to an abrupt halt the instant it struck the red barrier, as if it had been sealed in place. Vast swathes of crimson light surged forth, tightly wrapping around it. Her senior martial sister was stunned by this sudden turn of events. Yet, as an experienced cultivator, she immediately recognized the restriction at work. Her expression darkened as she flicked a finger, launching an icy white sword streak that carried bone-chilling cold. It circled the trapped talisman once before swiftly scattering the red light binding it. Delight flashed across the icy woman's face. In a burst of yellow light, she immediately shot upward, flying toward the ceiling through the newly opened gap. However, just as she reached the midpoint of the opening, a flash of purple light appeared before her eyes. Something abruptly wrapped around her body and yanked her violently away from the ceiling. A soft chuckle rang out. A white silhouette flickered into existence, revealing a young woman dressed in white. Silvermoon had appeared from the ceiling, gripping a translucent purple thread in her hand. The other end of the thread was firmly attached to the icy woman's body. Only then did Nangong Wan's senior martial sister realize that her entire body was ensnared within a net of faintly shimmering purple threads, so fine they were nearly invisible to the naked eye. Panicked and furious, she flicked her fingers without thinking, firing over 10 streaks of black and white sword ki. Immediately after, she spat out a dense mass of green flames, blasting them toward the purple net. Purple radiance surged forth, yet neither the green flames nor the sword ki were able to harm the threads in the slightest. True panic finally set in, just as she steeled herself to burn a massive amount of vitality to unleash a forbidden technique. Silvermoon smiled faintly and tugged on the purple thread. Restrain. The once loose net instantly tightened, binding the icy woman completely and leaving her unable to move even the slightest muscle. Her face flushed blood red. Ever since condensing her nascent soul, she had always been revered and feared by others, especially after reaching mid-nascent soul stage. Never before had she been reduced to such a humiliating state. Shame and fury burned in her eyes as brilliant light erupted from her body, swelling to twice its original size and faintly tinged with crimson. Silvermoon's smile vanished. She knew things were about to take a dangerous turn. Just as she commanded the purple cloudlace to release all of its Jadison true fire, Nangong Wan's urgent voice rang out through voice transmission. "Do not harm her. Leave her to me." The instant her words fell, the vermilion moon rose from below and enveloped the icy woman within its glow. The moon spun rapidly, its surface rippling, as countless overlapping afterimages filled the hall. From below, Han Li stared at the revolving moon in shock. His mind trembled violently, his focus nearly shattered. No wonder the icy woman had feared Nangong Wan's divine incarnation light so deeply. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the moon finally slowed to a stop. Nangong Wan stood pale and exhausted. With a wave of her hand, the vermilion moon shattered into starlight with a soft bang. Her senior martial sister reappeared, still suspended in midair and bound by the purple cloudlace. However, the spiritual ki within her body had completely calmed and she remained unconscious, a strange smile lingering on her face. What was that? Han Li asked in bewilderment. Some color returning to her cheeks, Nangong Wan smiled faintly. "Those trapped by my divine incarnation light cannot escape it even if they attempt to manifest their nascent soul. It also carries an extremely powerful bewitching effect. For the time being, my senior martial sister's mind has been completely overwhelmed by the divine light. This way we can spare her life." Han Li rubbed his nose helplessly. No wonder she feared it so much. Even a nascent soul can't manifest under its influence. Still, if we didn't need to keep her alive, there would have been no need for such troublesome methods. Killing her outright would have been far easier. Nangongwan sighed softly and forced a smile. Killing my senior martial sister, the sect's grand elder, is unacceptable. Since I intend to follow you, the masked moon sect will already suffer a severe blow. If she were to die as well, the sect would be crippled. The previous grand elder treated me with great kindness. Though I cannot sacrifice myself for the sect, I cannot bring myself to doom it to destruction. Hanli gave a wry smile. But she certainly didn't show you any mercy when she attacked and restrained you. That doesn't matter, Nangongwan replied calmly. By sparing her life, I can consider my debt to the previous Grand Elder repaid. I won't feel any lingering unease when I leave with you. Still, that last battle was truly dangerous. I never expected Senior Martial Sister to possess a heaven-defying devilish artifact like the Blood Devil Sword. It nearly led to catastrophe. Had I known earlier. She trailed off, her eyes flickering with guilt. Hanli merely smiled unconcerned. It's nothing. Wasn't the Blood Devil Sword unable to harm me in the end? In any case, let's quickly retrieve the restriction medallion and leave. Nangongwan nodded. Silvermoon obediently waved her hand, unraveling the purple cloud lace from the icy woman. Stepping forward, Nangongwan tapped several points on her senior martial sister's body, layering multiple restrictions on her. She then reached for the dark green storage pouch at the woman's waist and gently shook it open. With a flash of light, a pile of items spilled onto the floor. Hanli walked over curiously. The heart-constraining restriction medallion was easy to spot. Nangongwan quickly picked it up, smiling in relief. Hanli, meanwhile, swept his gaze over the pile and suddenly beckoned a small, exquisitely crafted ring into his hand. Pitch black and devoid of luster, it seemed utterly ordinary. Frowning, he lifted it closer for inspection. Nangongwan exclaimed in surprise, "Why are you interested in that? It looks like nothing more than an ordinary magic tool." Hanli chuckled softly and slapped his storage pouch, summoning a jade box. The box opened amid a flash of azure light, revealing an identical jet-black ring inside. Nangongwan couldn't help but cry out in astonishment. Hanli brought the two rings close together, sensing the same peculiar absence of ki from both. He then placed them back into the jade box and returned it to his storage pouch. Nangongwan smiled gently and said nothing more, her thoughts drifting elsewhere. Ignoring the remaining items, she walked over to her senior martial sister. Red light shimmered in her palm as she lightly touched the woman's forehead, then closed her eyes in silence. Seeing this, Hanli approached quietly, a faint smile on his face. A short while later, Nangongwan opened her eyes and raised her hand, revealing the Blood Devil Sword grasped firmly within it. She glanced at the blade only briefly, before tossing the devilish artifact to Hanli. "This weapon is far too dangerous to leave behind. Though I cannot use it, you can restrain it with your golden lightning. It's best that you keep it." Although Hanli did not know the full details of the Blood Devil Sword, he was well aware of its terrifying devilish ki backlash. Without hesitation, he stored it away, unwilling to let Nangongwan come into contact with such a dangerous artifact. As for the other items, such as the light stasis mirror, and her remaining treasures, Nangongwan had no intention of taking them. It seemed she wished to leave her senior martial sister a shred of dignity. Moreover, the light stasis mirror had gained its reputation while in that woman's possession. If others were to discover it had been taken, it would inevitably stir up endless trouble. At that moment, Nangongwan held the restriction talisman in her hand and gently squeezed it. A flicker of red light flashed, releasing a thread of pitch-black ki before the talisman crumbled away into nothingness. In high spirits after dissolving the restriction, Nangongwan smiled sweetly. "The heart-containing restriction has already been undone. But before we leave, I must leave a message behind for my senior martial sister." Hanli raised no objections. Nangongwan then took out a white jade slip and lightly pressed it against her forehead. The slip shimmered with faint light as her spiritual sense flowed into it, imprinting a message. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, she placed the jade slip atop the remaining items on the floor, then returned everything to the icy woman's storage pouch and fastened it back at her waist. With a hint of bashfulness, Nangongwan smiled at Hanli. "Let's go. Senior martial sister is still under the effects of my divine incarnation light. It will take her more than a day to fully awaken." Seeing her gentle expression, Hanli's heart stirred. He drew her close, and together they streaked out of the hall in a flash of light. On a nameless mountain along the border of the state of Beiliang, Nangong Wan stood beneath an ancient tree, frowning slightly. "What do you mean? Why are you sending me ahead alone to the drifting cloud sect?" Han Li stood beside her and spoke slowly. "My concubine and my senior martial brother Lu are still in Soaring Heaven's city. I suspect it has something to do with the Mulan invasion. Since they are connected to me, I cannot ignore them. I must go check on them myself." Nangong Wan shot him an unhappy glance. "If that's the case, then I'll go with you. Why must I leave on my own?" Wana Han Li said gently, "You are a nascent soul cultivator of the masked moon sect. There are many high-grade cultivators in the Nine Nations Union who will recognize you. Even though I taught you the appearance exchange technique, those with greater cultivation still have a chance to see through it. It would be safest for you to return to the drifting cloud sect first." She wrinkled her nose, worry evident in her eyes. "But you've already offended both the masked moon sect and the flowing mind sect. I can't help but feel uneasy letting you go to Soaring Heaven's city alone." Hanley chuckled softly. "Don't worry, you've seen what I'm capable of. Although there may be many cultivators stronger than me in Heavenly South, there are very few who can truly trap or kill me. Besides, I am an elder of the drifting cloud sect. With the Mulan invasion pressing down on the Nine Nations Union, no one will dare stir up trouble, and I expect your senior martial sister will follow your suggestion and provide an excuse for your disappearance otherwise. Her dealings with Wei Wuya would only worsen. There's little to fear." Seeing his resolve, Nangong Wan sighed. "Since you insist, I won't stop you, but you must take care of yourself. To be safer, take this." She slapped her storage pouch and produced an embroidered scarf, calmly handing it to Han Li. Feeling a peculiar spiritual key from it, Han Li asked curiously, "What is this?" Nangong Wan explained warmly, "It's a nameless ancient treasure I came across by chance during my travels. It's extremely convenient and responds directly to one's thoughts. You may encounter danger on your journey. Having this with you will put my mind at ease." Han Li fell silent, gazing into her clear, flowing eyes until she faintly blushed. Smiling, he accepted the scarf and carefully put it away. Seeing this, Nangong Wan smiled as well. After a moment, she seemed to recall something and took out a glittering red jade pendant. "This is a fire-repelling ornament I often carry. Although I dislike being tied down by external affairs, I once accepted a few in-name disciples out of passing interest. They aren't disciples of the masked moon sect, but two of them have opened a shop in Soaring Heaven's city. If you need assistance, show them this token. They will follow your instructions." She softly whispered the two names to him. Han Li felt a warmth stir in his heart and silently committed them to memory. It had been a long time since he had felt such concern from another. A month later, Han Li stood in the wilderness outside Soaring Heaven's city, gazing silently at the massive city in the distance. After reluctantly parting with Nangong Wan, he had traveled directly toward the state of Yu. Along the way, he learned from passing cultivators that war had already broken out along the borders of the states of Fengyuan and Yu. The news was grim. The main forces of the Nine Nations Union had suffered 3 consecutive crushing defeats. With no other choice, they relied on massive grand spell formations to barely defend their key strategic locations. The Union was clearly losing. Han Li frowned upon hearing this, but no one knew the specific details nor the cause of such devastating losses. All he could do was continue onward. After entering the state of Yu, he finally learned more. The Mulan spell warriors had discovered several massive savage beasts, catching the Nine Nations Union completely off guard and leading to their repeated defeats. The revelation deeply shocked Han Li, and he hastened towards Soaring Heaven's city. Although the city had lifted its restrictions on flight, most of the greater light extinguishing formation had already been activated. Subtle, nearly imperceptible fluctuations filled the air. It was clear the cultivators were preparing for war. After a brief glance, Han Li calmly flew toward the city gates. 8 cultivators stood guard. Aside from 1 core formation elder, the rest were at the foundation establishment stage. The elder initially moved to question Han Li, but after sweeping him with his spiritual sense, his expression changed drastically. When the light around Han Li faded, the old man hastily bowed. "Welcome, Senior. Have you come to attend the treaties meeting? May I ask for your esteemed name? I must register it according to the rules." Han Li raised an eyebrow. "Treaties meeting? What meeting?" Momentarily startled, the old man asked. Senior isn't here for the treaties meeting. Could it be that Senior is a vagrant cultivator? No, Han Li replied calmly. I am a cultivator of the Heavenly Tao Alliance. The old man quickly explained. With the Mulan's overwhelming assault, the Nine Nations Union can no longer hold them back alone. Thus, a treaties meeting is being held with other powers. Since Senior belongs to the Heavenly Tao Alliance, simply stating your name and sect will suffice. Han Li's eyes flickered. I am Han Li of the Drifting Cloud sect. He inwardly frowned. It seemed this trip would be far from simple. The old man didn't dare question him further and immediately stepped aside, allowing him entry. Han Li nodded and entered the city. The streets of Soaring Heaven's city were far emptier than during the trade fair. Those present wore anxious expressions. The news of defeat had clearly spread. Han Li flew straight toward his former residence. If Mu Peiling and senior marshal brother Lu hadn't left, they would be there. Soon he arrived at the building and extended his spiritual sense. A faint aura was present on the second floor. It belonged to Mu Peiling. A slight smile touched Han Li's lips. He quietly removed the restriction and entered the pavilion. Mu Peiling's face lit up with joy the instant she saw him. My lord, you've returned.